In today's lesson, we're going to learn how to convert between fractions, decimals and percentages. This lesson should last you 3 days. For today though, just work through the slides, then you'll have some worksheets to complete over the next 2 days. Yes, it's this slide again. What is a fraction? A fraction shows part of a whole. And the reason I keep on showing you this is because it's really important that you understand that concept, that a fraction does represent part of a whole. You've also seen this slide before. What is a decimal? We know that a decimal also represents part of a whole. Today though, we're going to need to think about what a percentage is. What do you think this word means? A percentage represents parts per hundred. And this is because per means for every and cent means hundred. And this originally came from the Latin per centum. Now we know that percentage means parts per hundred, we're going to have a think about it visually. On the first 100 square, there are 5 parts per hundred shaded. This is 5%. On the second 100 square, with the green squares, there are 35 parts per hundred shaded. This is 35%. And on the final 100 square, there are 25 parts per hundred shaded. This represents 25%. On the screen now are 200 squares. They've got parts that are shaded. Let's work out what fraction of each 100 square is shaded. We'll then write the fractions as percentages. The first 100 square has 20 little squares shaded. Therefore, we could write this as a fraction as 20 hundredths. This is equivalent to 20% because there are 20 parts per 100 shaded. The second 100 square has 74 little squares shaded. As a fraction, we'd write this as 74 hundredths, and this is equivalent to 74%. Have you noticed that in both, the number of squares shaded is the numerator, and then we have 100 as the denominator because the 100 square has 100 squares. Now we've seen how to convert fractions where the denominator is 100 into percentages, we're going to use this to help us complete the table. There's an issue though. All of these fractions have denominators that aren't 100. What could we use to help us work this problem out? You got it right. We're going to be using equivalent fractions to help us find the percentages. You'll notice that I've done the first two for you. When we're trying to convert a fraction into a percentage, the denominator of said fraction needs to be 100. Therefore, for the first one, I know that in order to make 2 into 100, I have to multiply 2 by 50. Because I've multiplied the 2 in the half by 50 to get 100, I also have to multiply the 1 to get 50. Therefore, my equivalent fraction to a half is 50 over 100. Now that I've got the fraction 50 hundredths, I can easily convert this into a percentage. 50 hundredths is the same as 50%. And I did exactly the same for the second one. I knew that I needed to multiply 4 by 25 to get 100 as the denominator. Therefore, because I multiplied 4 by 25, I had to multiply the 1 by 25. Therefore, my equivalent fraction was 25 hundredths. I know that 25 hundredths is equivalent to 25%. Now you've seen me do 2, I'd like you to do the bottom 2. You're going to need to first find equivalent fractions where the denominator is 100, and then you can convert it into a percentage. Remember though, that whatever you do to the bottom number, the denominator, to make it 100, you also need to do to the top number, the numerator. So, for 1/10, what am I going to need to multiply 10 by to get 100? Pause the video now and have a go at completing the rest of the table yourself. In a moment, I'll show you the answers. And here are the answers. 1/10 is equivalent to 10 hundredths. Therefore, 10 hundredths is equivalent to 10%. 1/5 is equivalent to 20 hundredths. Therefore, 1/5 is also equivalent to 20%. Use what we've just learnt to have a go at these questions by yourself. You're going to need to fill in the missing numbers. You'll notice that for some of them, you just need to find the percentage. And for some, you'll need to fill in parts of fractions. Please pause the video now so you can have a go by yourself. We've now got a think question. This asks us, in a maths test, Tommy answered 62% of the questions correctly. Rosie answered 3/5 of the question correctly. Who answered more questions correctly? And explain your answer. Now there's a bit of an issue here because this question is asking us to compare a fraction to a percentage, and that's quite difficult. So what could we do to be able to compare these more easily? You've got it. We could convert one of them. I'm choosing to convert 3/5 into percentages because I think that will be easier. When we convert 3/5, we need to first find the equivalent fraction to be able to convert it into a percentage. I know that 3/5 is the same as 60 hundredths when I times both the numerator and the denominator by 20. I can then convert this into a percentage. 60 hundredths would be the same as what percent? Yes, 60 hundredths is the same as 60%. So, our question, we know that the answer is that Tommy has answered more questions correctly because 3/5 as a percentage is 60% and this is less than 62%. Now that we've had a go at converting fractions into percentages, we're going to be bringing in decimals. Now, if you remember correctly, we looked at decimals and fractions before. What could we use to convert decimals to fractions? Before, we used place value grids to help us. On the screen, I've put a place value grid, and I've written the decimals in this grid, so that each number or digit is in the right column. You'll notice my place value grid on the left-hand side of the screen. Let's look at 0.27. This number, this decimal, has both tenths and hundredths. And because it has both, when we're converting it into a fraction, 27 has to go over 100. Because there's a number that falls in the hundredths column. 0.27 therefore has the value of 27 hundredths. Let's look at 0.6. Now 0.6 only has a digit in the tenths column. Therefore, we would put the 6 over 10. 0.6 has the value of 6/10 as a fraction. Now we're needing to convert fractions into percentages. So 6/10 becomes 60 hundredths as an equivalent fraction. Let's look at our final decimal, 0.06. Now this is a tricksy one because it makes us think that it should be 6 over 10 because there's only one digit that has a value. However, the 6 falls in the hundredths column. And because there is a number that's in the hundredths column, 6 needs to go over 100 when it's in a fraction. Therefore, 0.06 is the same as 6 hundredths. Converting them into percentages is now really easy because they're all over 100. So 27 hundredths becomes 27%, 60 hundredths becomes 60%, and 6 hundredths becomes 6%. Let's have a look at another type of question that's asking us to convert. On the screen, a variety of decimals, percentages and fractions. What do we need to do to be able to compare these numbers accurately? We need to convert them because we can't compare numbers that are presented in different ways. We can't compare decimals to percentages very easily. Therefore, 0.36 becomes 36% so that we can compare it more easily with 40%. I've converted 0.4 also into percentage so that I can more easily compare 40% with 25%. On the third one, I've decided to convert both and find equivalents. I think this will help me and make it a bit easier. Therefore, I found the equivalent fraction, 70 hundredths, to compare it to 7 hundredths. Then, on the final question, I've decided to convert my quarter into decimals. I've converted it so that it is now 0.25. And to help me compare them better, I've added a placeholder to the 0.4, so it now reads as 0.40. It's now really easy to compare all of these numbers. 40% is bigger than 36%. 40% is greater than 25%. 70 hundredths is greater than 7 hundredths. And 0.40 is greater than 0.25. Now, you might be getting a little worried because I managed to convert all of those rather quickly. And the simple reason is that I've been doing maths a lot longer than you have. But you don't need to worry. I've put some conversion rules at the end of this video, and I'll also attach a slide onto Microsoft Teams so that you know the simple rules of how to convert between decimals, fractions and percentages quickly. The reason I was showing you this slide was to show you that when we're comparing fractions, decimals and percentages, we do need to convert them first so it's easier. When you do some of these on your own, you'll also need to do the same. Having just said that, on the screen we've got a variety of fractions, decimals, and we're trying to compare them to a percentage. What do we need to do to make them easier to compare? You've got it. We need to convert them all to percentages. This question asks us which of these are equivalent to 60%. I've converted 60 100ths, and this makes 60%. 6 hundredths is equivalent to 6%. 0.06 is equivalent to 6%. 3/5 is equivalent to 60%. 3/50 is equivalent to 6%. And finally, 0.6 is equivalent to 60%. The fractions and decimals that are equivalent to 60% are circled on the screen. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? Now you may be thinking, how on earth did I get from 3/5 to 60%? What I did is I found an equivalent fraction where 100 was the denominator. The equivalent fraction to 3/5, where 100 is the denominator, was 60 over 100. I know that 60 over 100 is 60% because there are 60 parts per 100. Let's have a go at another think. Amir says 0.3 is less than 12% because 3 is less than 12. Explain why Amir is wrong. What could we do to make these easier to compare? You can convert them. Now, it's probably easier to convert 0.3 into a percentage than it is to convert 12% back into a decimal. What would 0.3 be as a percentage? I know that 0.3 has the value of 3/10 because 3 falls into the tenths column. Now when I'm trying to find percentages though, the denominator in a fraction has to be 100. Therefore, 3/10, or 0.3, would convert into 30 hundredths. 30 hundredths is equivalent to 30%. The reason that Amir is wrong is because 0.3 is equivalent to 30%, and 30% is greater than 12%. What Amir did is look at the digits rather than doing any converting. Here's another think question. In his first geography test, Mo scored 38%. In the next test, he scored 16/40. Did Mo improve his score? Explain your answer. Now, as this is a think question, we need to first answer the question. So did Mo actually improve his score? We then need to do some maths to prove it, and we need to give a written explanation of our answer. I'd like you to pause the video here and have a go at trying this yourself. Now, it is quite a tricksy think, so if you get stuck, that's fine. The answer will be coming up soon, so you'll be able to see if you've got the answer right. Now, I don't think I'm a mean person, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a hint. If I was answering this question, I'd be trying to convert the fraction into a percentage. And if you remember, the way we convert a fraction into a percentage is that the denominator has to have the value of 100. Now, we can't very easily multiply 40 by something to make 100. So what we're going to do is simplify the fraction first. Now, 16 and 40 are both multiples of 8. So I could simplify my fraction into 2/5. This is much easier to make into a fraction where the denominator equals 100. What would I then need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by, so 2/5 by, so that the denominator had the value of 100? Once you've found an equivalent fraction for 16/40, where the new fraction is hundredths, you'll be able to convert this into a percentage and more easily compare. Pause the video here and have a go at this think question yourself. On the screen is the answer now. Well done if you got it correct. The answer was that Mo improved his score because 16/40 is equivalent to 40%, which is greater than his previous score of 38%. Earlier on in this presentation, I mentioned that I'd be showing you some conversion rules, and here they are. You'll notice that on the left are the rules, and on the right are some examples of how you actually do this. So, when we're trying to convert a fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. So, 2/5 equals 0.4 because 2 divided by 5 equals 0.4. And do you remember when we did this in a previous lesson, we did short division to help us do this. When we're trying to convert a decimal to a fraction, we put the digits after the decimal point over 100 and simplify. So 0.24 is equivalent to 24 hundredths. 24 hundredths is equivalent to 6/25. I know this because 24 divided by 4 equals 6, so this is the numerator, and 100 divided by 4 is 25. When we're trying to find a fraction to a percentage, we need to first find an equivalent fraction, so the denominator is 100, and the numerator is your percentage. So 3/4 is the same as 75 over 100. Therefore, 3/4 is the same as 75% because I have multiplied both the numerator and the denominator by 25 to find the equivalent fraction. When we're wanting to find a percentage to a fraction, all we need to do is put the percentage over 100 and simplify. So 22% equals 22 over 100, and I can simplify this, and it is equivalent to 11/50. When I'm wanting to convert a decimal to a percentage, all I need to do is multiply the decimal by 100. So 0.04 is the same as 4% because 0.04 times 100 equals 4. When I want to convert a percentage back to a decimal, all I need to do is divide the percentage by 100. So 93% is converted to 0.93 because 93 divided by 100 equals 0.93. I hope seeing these conversion rules written down has helped you. because you're going to need to use these when you move on to doing your do's, your thinks and your explore questions. Now, we're only expecting you to do about an hour's worth of maths each day. So if watching this video and pausing it and working out the answers to the questions when I've asked you to has taken you an hour, please stop now. You will then need to do your do questions tomorrow and your thinks and your explores the day after. You'll find all the worksheets that you need to do on Microsoft Teams, and there'll also be a copy of this whole presentation and in particular this slide there too. If you want to print out this slide so that it's ready and handy for when you're answering the questions, feel free to do so. Well done for making it to the end of this maths lesson. Hopefully by now you can convert between fractions, decimals and percentages. Do remember that if you get stuck on any of the work, you can always email us and we'll try and help you. Good luck with the rest of your work. Bye!